Wildest dreams, indeed. We're about to talk to a monster hunter. How's that for a job description, huh? Somebody who actually hunts monsters. Peter von Puttkamer, film director, joined the monster hunters on their quest to prove the existence of creatures science says aren't there, don't exist. He's been traveling through dark jungles and mountain caves around the world to document their journey. 2 years in the making, featuring 6 segments shot in England, Puerto Rico, Tasmania, Southern Australia, New Jersey, that's right, New Jersey, and British Columbia. There is a Jersey Devil, you know. His documentary delves into the bizarre world of cryptozoology and the obsessed people who inhabit it. Obsessed, Peter von Puttkamer has been producing international award-winning films in the U.S. and Canada over the last 20 years. His documentaries have aired on Discovery Channel, TLC, Canada, U.S. and Europe, Global TV, CBC, CTV, SBS, everywhere it seems. These programs have won more than 50 international awards. Von Puttkamer has also directed short dramas and worked as a director of photography and editor on PBS documentaries. Programs have dealt with a variety of issues: anthropology, environment, socio-political themes of various sorts, medical breakthroughs, and films produced for and about Native Americans. His interest in the mythology and cultures of Native peoples led to a lifelong fascination with unknown mysteries, monsters, legendary animals, and, of course, the supernatural. His 1992 film, The Spirit of the Mask, provided an unprecedented look at the fantastic world of Northwest Coast native masks and spiritual messages they contain for our world. Hosted by best-selling author Wade Davis, The Serpent and the Rainbow, the film featured rarely seen native ceremonies. Sasquatch Odyssey came about through his interest in the wild man myths of the world. We know all about those, don't we? Discussions with producer Julie Lee about the life of Renee Dahinden and his 45-year search for Bigfoot. His most recent film, Monster Hunters, won the Platinum Award from the 35th Annual World Fest Houston Festival in 2 categories, Best TV Documentary Series and Best TV Documentary Special. He is a monster hunter, and we've got eyewitness taped reports for you tonight. You're just not going to believe it. Stay right there. Well, all right. Here is Peter von Puttkamer, and I hope I'm doing that fairly well.
Good evening. It's great to be on the show, Art.
Good evening, Peter. Where are you?
I'm up in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Oh, that's a good place to be if you're going to hunt monsters anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a few of them up here.
Now, just out of general curiosity, Peter, how does a person get to be a monster hunter?
Well, you know, it's very flattering of you to call me a monster hunter, but as a filmmaker, I really consider myself a hunter of monster hunters because what we were really doing in our show was featuring people that, you know, have spent many, many years chasing after these elusive creatures, and there seems to be no limit to the number of ways you can chase a monster and the approaches you can take, and, you know, people are coming from all walks of life doing this.
So you decided, okay then, I'll get with what seems to be a productive monster hunting group and bring the camera along, something like that?
Well, actually, I can tell you a little bit about, like for me, how this started, like how I got off on this whole tangent with monsters, because my work had been in wildlife photography, wildlife filmmaking, and working with Native Americans, ethnographic films, and so on. And we got into doing a film called Sasquatch Odyssey, The Hunt for Bigfoot, just 2 or 3 years ago. And we had a chance to follow the life of Renee Dahinden and Peter Byrne and John Green and Dr. Grover Krantz, who just passed away. And that became a profile of these men that had spent more than 40 years searching for a creature, you know, that the rest of the world isn't too sure about. And that just, to me, it just opened up a whole world of amazing stories and just the determination of these people to go after something and with, very little evidence, but with some very, very compelling eyewitness reports.
All right, we're going to be talking about things like the Jersey Devil and Chupacabras. Boy, did we deal with that on this show, Tasmanian Tiger, that sort of thing. We really have done a lot on this program about all of this, but like everybody else, Peter, we haven't pinned it down. I mean, we don't have a captured Chupacabra or Jersey Devil to put on display or anything like that, and yet I guess I would ask, in all of your research, before we even get into all of these cuts we have here,
yes,
are you convinced that this is not just myth and legend?
Are you just referring to those two creatures?
No. In
general?
No. Throw in Bigfoot. Throw in everything you want.
Well, I've made up my own little list of creatures from greater credibility to lesser, and that's not to take away from things like the Jersey Devil. Anytime you have a story of a creature that is born the cursed 13th child of a woman who might have consorted with the devil, your credibility gets stretched a little bit, but I mean, certainly things like the Cadbosaurus, which is, I hope we're going to get into a discussion on that, because I think it's, in my mind, the most credible of all of the sea monsters or even lake monsters that I've ever encountered or read about.
Well, I'm seeing an awful lot of press lately on large sea monsters, actually, and they've got some pictures of just bigger than we ever could believe even existed sea creatures. I mean, gigantic things.
I think that there's a lot of credibility. I mean, I came away from this basically, I guess, with about an 80% ratio of believability, in which I thought, there really is something going on here that, you can't just explain away as mass hysteria or a hoax, because there's too many incidents for these things to be hoaxed again and again. And in the case of a Chupacabra, I mean, we were down there with a group of paranormal experts, Beyond Boundaries, Joyce Murphy and her group, and also Bob Buck. And basically what we were doing was, tracking down these stories and seeing how credible they were.
Right.
And they were also using some remote viewers to get to places where people hadn't really looked before, and one of them was the Arecibo Space Telescope. So that was, that was pretty fantastic, I mean, we were really, really out there on the edges of the paranormal.
Okay, well, that is my big question, and that is, how much of this do you put in the category of paranormal? I mean, a lot of people, after all, think that Bigfoot is a leftover. Bigfoot actually lives here and simply hides effectively, and same with a lot of other creatures, versus the paranormal, that they blink in and they blink out, might be from another dimension. I mean, who knows? Where do you put the weight there?
Well, if you were one of the in the show I did on Bigfoot, that was a big debate. I mean, you had this group of as they're referred to, the four horsemen of Sasquatchery, the guys that had been out there in the bush pounding the beat, looking for the physical evidence. And then you had a school of people that were believing in, interdimensional travel, beaming down from UFOs and this sort of thing. And definitely there was a big divide there. I think there's just way too much evidence globally for this wild man myth to be something, a figment of people's imagination, because, even in Europe, I mean...
Okay, let's again nail down what we're talking about. You said a figment of people's imagination. Now, by that, are you saying that is paranormal, if you're putting it off to a figment of their imagination? Or
I just think,
are you saying the wild man thing is real and they're really here and really living here and really hiding and we just don't see them very often?
Yeah, I believe that my own philosophy on this now, and having talked to, all of these old-timers about it, and also the eyewitness reports, is that I believe that Bigfoot may have indeed existed here as it existed on many continents, but isn't necessarily here anymore. But I do think there's been an impact through the deforestation and industry and what have you. And I think if there's any still around, they've headed for the hills. Which I think there used to be a lot more reports on them than there are now. Although they still continue to come in. And yet, for example, in a relatively urban area like New Jersey, we've still got the Jersey Devil. Can we play one of those segments? Sure. Can I do that? Yeah, absolutely. Sort of just do it as we go. In New Jersey, of all places, what is it we're about to hear? You know what? I'm not entirely sure, but I suspect it's one of the hunts. All right, I've got three apparent tracks that relate to the Jersey Devil. Let's see what we've got here. Okay. Here we go.
I seen this thing going across the top of the bushes, and the only way I can describe it is that it was like the mobile horse, the sign of the mobile horse.
Yeah, it sounded like a woman screaming, but real loud. If you can picture amplification, loudest scream you ever heard, maybe 10 times more or even 15 times more, where it would wake you up out of a dead sleep. And it would just scream bloody murder, and I'm telling you, you had to hear it to believe actually how loud it would be.
All right, that's the first cut, and that's about the Jersey Devil. And this one, too, Laura Luter, I believe it is, followed by a couple of authors on the Jersey Devil.
There's just the immense curiosity that builds up behind this legend. How can it be a hoax when all of this stuff has happened? How could all of these people have seen it? Is it really the 13th child? Is it a biological creature we haven't found yet? What is it?
The Jersey Devil has been called the official state demon of the state of New Jersey.
All states have state birds, butterflies, fish, but New Jersey's the only one with a demon.
The Jersey Devil has a number of forms. Quite a few monsters just have maybe one form that they're known for. But the Jersey Devil has been anything from a demonic type of shape, one of its most common features, kind of gargoyle-looking, with a horse-like head, bat wings. Put that all together, it makes it a kind of a different, unexplained monster.
And then finally, on the scream of the Jersey Devil.
You got it, Sean?
Yeah. Well, then?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, let's keep going.
All right, Lori, you hear something?
Yeah, I do. We've come across the Jersey Devil screech a couple times collectively, the people in the group. And it sounded like machinery and a woman and an animal all combined. It sent chills up my spine. Just got as quiet as possible. It sounded exactly like what I've ever heard described. I hear that.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I heard that very, very, very clearly, actually. Now, there was Jersey. They said that it possibly demonic in nature. Mm-hmm. That kind of follows the Jersey Devil, what people say about it, because I don't rule anything out, and one of the possibilities is that there is something demonic. I mean, you just simply can't rule it out. You've got God and the Bible and the fact that, they surely say there are these demons, then a lot of people would believe it could be so. It could be demonic, couldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is an incredible creature and phenomenon. I think more should be written and done, to let people know about it, because it's, for one thing, it's a great American legend. It's really as big a phenomenon as Bigfoot, and just hasn't gotten the press.
Yeah, but Peter, if this thing really was or is demonic,
yes,
would you want to really encounter it?
No, I mean, it was actually very scary to be out there. It was actually, of all the places we went to in the world, New Jersey was the scariest. Where we were in that forest, and you got a picture, like every few hundred yards, I mean, you're out in the forest. It's very noisy in there, as you could hear.
Yes.
And we're traveling with this group. I mean, we really did go on these hunts with them. I mean, you know, we went out into the night. They got lost at one point. It was just like the Blair Witch kind of experience. And it was creepy. And the thing about it is there's tombstones every few hundred yards. There's these family plots.
Yes.
We have family plots in this neck of the woods down there, and they're like from the 1700s and 1800s. So there's old graves everywhere as you're walking through these woods.
Well, you know, encountering something that's been here for a long time, that's one thing. Encountering even a ghost or something of that nature is bad enough. But encountering something that's actually demonic, I'd be going the other way so fast, Peter. You know, hearing those sounds, the demonic part, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with it.
Well, I can tell you a little bit more about those first two eyewitness things that we heard.
Please do.
Because it's very interesting. These people, they're called the Pineys, and it's actually become a bit of a derogatory term now, but it used to be the way they were referred to, and they're people that live in the Pine Barrens. A lot of folks don't know that southern New Jersey is actually kind of a pristine wilderness. There's an area the size of Delaware down there that's all these pine barrens and dunes and swamps. And it's very desolate, and, you know, there could possibly be a species of animal in there that you wouldn't know about.
Oh, Peter, they could be all across the country. Listen, we tend to live, you know, kind of in cities, but if you plan a road trip, which you ought to do because traveling overseas these days isn't much fun anyway, and you travel across the United States, you will realize very, very quickly that for all we are, 300 million of us, my God, there's a lot of barren territory out there and forested territory, and it just virtually untouched.
Yes. Well, these Pineys, I agree totally. I think there's lots of places for creatures to hide and dark corners for them to live in. And this place, the Pine Barrens, is certainly one. And those two people we heard, it's a family named the Higginbothams, and they've been there since the 1940s. The first person we heard was the mom, and she, I mean, this is one of the only actual modern-day sightings, I think. I mean, it's a very clear daylight sighting of the Jersey Devil, and, you know, I've interviewed a lot of people. You want to talk about credibility, right?
Yes.
I mean, this lady told this story, you know, without any great embellishment. I mean, it was like, matter of fact, yeah, this is what I saw, and it wasn't a vulture. She said, I know what vultures look like. This thing had a horse-like head, and it had this fur on it, and it was very, very strange, and she could only describe it looking like the mobile horse, or like a flying horse, like a Pegasus.
Right here on Earth right now. All right, hold on, Peter. I'm Art Bell, and we have with us a monster hunter camera person. Maybe that would be better. We've got a whole lot of cuts for you on these things that science says aren't there, but I think most of us know they certainly are there in one form or another, one dimension or another. We'll be right back. I should know better. I lived in parts of I lived in Newark, New Jersey. I lived in the urban areas of New Jersey, and so I never really thought about it that much. But Bob in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Rob, rather, points out, Art, except for Newark and Camden, it's not the urban jungle you might imagine. New Jersey, of course, is much of it's forested, and a good deal of the area is known as the Pine Barrens coming inland from the shore, and that's exactly where we were with Peter. Peter?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just referring back to the those first two cuts we heard, the folks that live in Pine Barrens, and the second eyewitness, Randy Higginbotham. I mean, they've had more than one encounter with this sound, and what he actually said to me the first time was that it sounded like a woman being torn apart, is what he said. It sounded like somebody being murdered out in the swamps. And it was so loud, he said it shook the walls of the house. They ran out with their guns. And this happened I mean,
Now
night
that-
after night, over a period of at least 2 years.
Now, you see, that's what I'd do. I'd get a gun and I'd run out. If I heard something like that, you're damn right I'd have a gun. That's the normal reaction.
But it's so odd. I mean, it's like if it happens once, you go, okay, well, you know, maybe somebody was drunk or screaming or something. But for it to happen, and it's totally unpopulated, like this area he's referring to, there's nobody that lives back in there. It's just a swamp. And what could have been causing that? And at the sound, you know, the sound levels, just even to produce that, what is actually making that sound? It's pretty weird.
I don't know. But you gave us one description. I mean, what is the Jersey Devil known to have done? Is it actually ever known to have done anything, as in?
Yes, very much so. Going back to the original legend, and there's a lot of different variations on this story. You know, things started during the Revolutionary Wars, and I mean, the most popular legend is there was a lady, Mother Leeds. Now, the Leeds family was a wealthy family in that area. Had 12 children, was, you know, burdened with, you know, too many kids to take care of or what have you, and declared, let this next child be a devil. And this baby was born. Apparently, first it looked normal, and then it transformed into a demon in front of them. And in one of the more popular accounts, actually killed a whole bunch of people, like ate the parents, and then flew out the window.
Oh my God!
And that's one of the more demonic stories about it. And the
only trouble I have with that is that if there's a paranormal aspect to these creatures, how could they eat people in this dimension where they can barely just appear, scaring the hell out of us? But I mean, that would imply that this is some real creature, not some paranormal phenomenon.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we're talking about a flesh and blood demon here, and I mean, the fact that you've got a hero of the Revolutionary War, Commodore Decatur, you know, at a firing range testing cannon shells for his war against the Barbary pirates, and he sees the Jersey Devil go by and fires into it, and some of the grape shot goes through the wing of the Jersey Devil, and it keeps flying.
Oh, that's strange.
Very odd story, but
yeah, very odd. Then we've got. We're going to jump to the United Kingdom here, and I can't tell you. I do this program, so we talk about this sort of thing all the time, this kind of phenomena, and I have policemen calling me all the time. Policemen encounter these things, and they make superb witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're cops. I mean, they're trained to notice things, even under stress. They're trained to still notice things. They have their brain working a different way than ours, and it's trained to notice things.
Yeah.
And you've got this interview or something coming up with this police constable.
Yes. Well, what was interesting over there is the sightings of phantom big cats, leopards, and pumas and cougars in the British countryside is now so common that the police barely even bother going out when they hear about it because, just another panther on the prowl, you know. And we had our pick of policemen, like they all had personal encounters with it.
Yes.
They all knew they existed. The RSPCA know they're there. But here's the mystery part. No bodies have shown up, no dead creatures on the highway, and the government has not officially acknowledged the presence of these animals in the country.
So in other words, hence the name Phantom, huh?
Yes.
Okay, here's a police officer in the United Kingdom whose name is Police Constable Dave Toon.
When I lowered the binoculars and turned to my right, about 10 yards to my right was this big black cat, and I could see that it was about the size of a small fox, certainly 2 to 3 times bigger than a household cat. It turned, looked at me, and ran off. But as it ran in a loping sort of movement, keeping its head very, very still. and very low to the ground, which again is reminiscent of large black cats such as panthers and that type of animal.
All right, so there you have a police officer down in the United Kingdom. Very interesting. And then there's I guess well, no, there is not. That was the same cut. I see. Okay, so we're going to move from there to Chupacabras in a second. But these phantom cats, so they disappear? They just poof?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm in touch with some of the monster hunters we work with over there. Quentin Rhodes, who is an actual animal, very unusual. I mean, this man learned his trapping techniques from the Cree and Chippewa Indians in northern Canada. He's very, very British. He's like a small Welshman. He's out there with a leopard trap. He's the only person in England licensed to carry a leopard trap that will actually trap live leopards in the United Kingdom. So you'll see him inside of, sort of 16th century castles setting up a leopard trap. It's a very odd thing. Other people like the Spencers, who run something called the Leicestershire Rutland Panther Watch, and they get a sighting about once a week. It's very common.
This brings us to something that I've discussed extensively on the show, and boy, have we batted this back around and around and around and around. The whole Chupacabra thing. We went through a sort of a period of time. It seemed to last, I don't know, the better part of a year, I think. And we began to get these reports from Puerto Rico, and then later from South America, then from Mexico, and then from the Southwest United States, of this really awful creature called a Chupacabra, and it was killing animals and sucking their blood. And I've got Linda Moulton Howe who reported on that. She took a trip down to Puerto Rico to report on these things, and whatever in God's name, maybe I shouldn't use that phrase, whatever in whoever's name whatever these things are, they're real. They really did do the things described. I mean, we had veterinarians report to us on these 2 marks and all the blood drawn out of animals and stuff like that. So what do you know about Chupacabras?
Well, one thing that I guess my background in working with native Indians and ethnography and so on, that one thing I uncovered that I'd never read anywhere in any of the Chupacabra literature was, because I was fascinated in the whole phenomenon, the Taino Indians, who are the ancient people that lived in Puerto Rico before the Spanish came there, the people whose mountain was actually, they traveled there to get closer to the gods. That's why they went to El Yunque. It's the highest point in that area of the Caribbean. And so they lived there, and they had legends about, demons and creatures of the night, but they specifically had a legend about something they called the Mosquito Man. And I found this legend, and the Mosquito Man would travel at night into villages and drill these 2 small holes into the necks of their victims, draining them of blood. And so, it got me thinking, okay, there must be some connection to the Chupacabra myth here, or Chupacabra phenomenon. And it's very, very interesting to me. Of course, in a number of eyewitnesses, we went out and met people, and I also viewed a lot of existing film footage that was done, and, people are truly frightened by this. It doesn't appear to be any kind of a hoax to me.
I've heard these creatures can travel 60, 70 miles an hour really, really fast. Have you heard that as part of this?
Yeah, we heard variations. There was a lady who described one hovering by her window. It actually moved. There's everything from jumping like a kangaroo to, it's hovering. The glowing eyes, and just tremendous strength, so much so that, there's a well-known account now of a 1,500-pound bull being taken down.
Yeah, wouldn't these be, why wouldn't they be classified as vampires? If they put 2 holes in the neck and they draw out all the blood, that sure sounds a lot like a vampire to me.
Well, amongst our group, the Beyond Boundaries group that was down there, I mean, there are a lot of different theories, and one of them was that, you know, it was some kind of alien pet.
Alien pet?
Alien pet, because there were sightings of UFOs and then Chupacabras. You know, it's a genetic experiment. Military, there's so many military secret bases in Puerto Rico, and including one right at the very, very top of El Yunque, the Taino Indians' legendary mountain, that, you know, it sits right in the rainforest, right where this thing is supposed to exist. And it gets you thinking, you know, is this some kind of government genetic experiment gone wrong? And that's what one of our monster hunters believes.
All right, would that be Bob Buck?
Yes.
All right, let's play that segment. Here is, on the Chupacabra, here's Bob Buck.
And you're not an animal I think you'd really want to upset. Anything can kill a healthy 1,500-pound bull, run it down and kill it. I don't think most people would really want to come face to face with it.
And one night, we can hear rattling noises. Cages were bent in. Some of them the wounds were in the neck. The ones that were laying on the floor. But the ones that were still in their cages, it seems like whatever it was pulling the rabbit out of the cages.
All right, and here's one more eyewitness.
I personally do not believe or disbelieve on the Chupacabra. I take it that the people that see these as witnesses aren't lying, aren't crazy, aren't drunk, and that, well, illusions don't kill animals. It's definitely a creature. And once you determine that, then you look at the evidence to try to determine what this creature may be.
Let's move back one more time to the actual eyewitness account.
And one night, we can hear rattling noises. Cages were bent in. Some of them the wounds were in the neck. The ones that were laying on the floor. But the ones that were still in their cages, it seems like whatever it was pulling the rabbit out of the cages.
Yeah. That goes along with all these reports we had. I mean, we had veterinarians on the job examining these creatures, and this is not somebody's imagination. Something was definitely poking 2 holes in the neck, and by the way, I might add, a very weird way, and drawing every bit of blood out. And then there's this other thing, this weird thing about this Chupacabras, and that's that it's kind of like it came, it traveled, it killed, and that went away. It went away. And who knows if it's going to be back, but we haven't had reports now for a while, or are you getting reports?
I haven't had any brand new reports on this, but it seems like these things kind of come and go in you know, different stretches of time. The reports come in. But one thing was interesting is we had a chance to talk to the mayor of the town that actually built a steel cage and had 200 of his civil defense troops, you know, out there trying to trap one of these.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And what did he say?
Well, he's one of the only government officials down there who's actually come forward, and he's basically just trying to make his area safe for his people. And there were, the head of his security team there, he's talked to a lot of people. He's been out on, you know, he's packing a rifle out there when he goes out there, and he's convinced that, you know, there's something real out there. But they were tying goats to trees, and they had this cage, and they were serious about trying to actually capture this, but, you know, they didn't get it.
What do you think would happen, Peter, if one of these things were caught? What do you think would happen? I mean, right now you can go to a circus or a sideshow and you can see things for, you know, $1.25 or whatever it is that just seem impossible. Would the world believe what it saw, or, you know, would somehow all of it just get masked over and it would be some sort of aberration, or, you know, the people who would have to examine something like this wouldn't want to see something that wouldn't fit their tight little paradigms?
Well, I think you're right. I think nowadays more than ever, unfortunately, the world, it's gotten much tougher for monster hunters to prove the existence of things because with the digital photography and Photoshop and all those sorts of things,
everything can be faked.
Everything can be faked, and I think that's what science is waiting for, is some kind of body that can be examined. I'm not sure why more hasn't been made of this veterinarian, Carlos Soto, who we got some tape of as well. I mean, he's very, very clear about, I mean, it's, you know, he's examining animals, and he's talking about a, you know, tube-like device that is being inserted into the internal organs of the animals because he's finding spaghetti-like holes all the way through the bodies of these animals.
Yes.
Now, you know, I mean, he's a trained medical. I believe he was trained in the United States. You know, he knows what he's looking at, and I'm not sure why that hasn't been followed up a bit more.
Well, maybe because as a society, we kind of like believing in monsters to scare ourselves, but I'm not sure that we want hard evidence of monsters. Then you go from scary to, hey, this is really scary, you know, really, really scary. It's real. It's not a myth. It's not a sit around the fire telling a ghost story kind of deal. It's real.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that's one of the things that drew me to these projects is just people's need to have monsters in our midst. Why do we need a wild man? Why do we need this hairy other out there? Why do we need blood-sucking alien vampires?
Because we like to be scared.
Yeah.
But I don't think we like to really understand, well, here is a veterinarian been examining these carcasses. And by the way, the Chupacabra was said to have attacked. There were several eyewitnesses, for example, in Mexico, in attacks of human beings. And they told some pretty awful stories. And we've, you know, while we don't have photographs, we've got drawings of the Chupacabra. And it's a horrible, horrible creature that moves very, very fast.
Well, we actually, I wasn't too satisfied with any of the depictions I had seen in sketches or anything else, because most of them were hastily drawn eyewitness sketches, and while we didn't exactly have a Hollywood budget on this film, we did manage to get one of the people who work on you know, major television series, science fiction series, to construct a Chupacabra for us, and what it...
Based on all of the eyewitnesses.
Based on all of the eyewitness.
All right, hold that thought. We're at the top of the hour. Hold that thought, and we'll be right back. I'm Art Bell, and we have with us tonight a monster hunter, Peter von Puttkamer. Stay right where you are. All right, back to our friend, the monster hunter, Peter. Actually, he's not a monster hunter. I keep saying that, but in a way you are.
Sure.
In a way you are, so it's kind of fair.
I'll take that title, sure.
Any idea of where the Chupacabra originated? Do you believe it's actually from Puerto Rico, was sprouted or cooked up in Puerto Rico, or in some other dimension?
Well, there's a lot of theories on that, of course, but I think that I think Puerto Rico is a unique environment for creating such a creature as the Chupacabra, because you have these Taino Indian legends, you have the secret, you know, government bases there. You know, you have a rainforest. I mean, it's an island.
So let's think about this. If it was a military base and a military experiment, then if it got loose, they wouldn't need much of a cover story, would they? In other words, it's just something that came out of the forest.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I mean, we did talk. You know, we talked to the people at Arecibo, and we talked to the people at in the national parks, you know, and of course they're very adamant of their, not being such a creature there.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yes.
Seth Shostak, who's down at Arecibo frequently, would be the first to tell you what a bunch of bunk.
Yeah.
You know, he heads up the SETI project, and he takes a lot of flack himself, but he doesn't believe in this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists don't.
Well, it does make you think when you're at that Arecibo, you think of them sending signals to outer space for all these, 40 to 50 years, and where would a craft or where would an alien, head in on? They'd head in on a beam coming from that location. I mean, it's been sending signals out for decades.
No, actually, that's not true. Arecibo sent one extremely strong short burst into space. This might interest you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and that was many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then scientists here and in Canada both lobbied to stop it because they said, what you're doing here is serious, and it may well be that you're going to send a signal out, something this strong, and it really is going to be received, and we're going to have some visitors that we wouldn't like, and based on that psychology, they stopped sending signals. Arecibo now only receives. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But that one signal did go blasting out there, so yeah, something might have homed in on it, and so sure, the Chupacabra originating from that point might make some sense.
Mm-hmm.
There you are, Peter. All right, what do we know about the Cadbosaurus, is it?
Yes.
What is that?
Well, this is a great monster.
A great monster.
This is a great monster. This is one I am quite certain exists. I think there's really something going on here. For one thing, if you haven't seen the photograph, we've got one on our website, monsterhunters.com, but it's basically, I think, the best cryptozoological image that I've ever seen, short of maybe that famous Patterson film from the Sasquatch days back in 1967. I mean, this is better than any image that was ever taken of Loch Ness or any other lake monster. There's a picture of a juvenile version of one of these creatures that's been pulled from the belly of a sperm whale, and it was propped up on the dock, and it was taken by a first aid officer. This is at a whaling station in northern British Columbia in 1937, and these pictures were taken of it.
All right, listen, I'm trying to get on your website right now. It's jammed up, unfortunately, because we're talking about it. So can you describe what's in this photo? I'll eventually get to it, but for us right now that can't see it.
Sure, I'll tell you what it is. Is there's a I'll describe it briefly, and then I'll give you a little background on this creature. So what it is essentially is a snake-like creature with clear humps and a camel-like head and a tail that's quite detailed in its. If you can actually blow this up, and you can see a kind of an articulated, almost hand, almost like a lobster tail or something coming around on it. And it's about sort of 12 to 14 feet long. We actually interviewed in the show 86-year-old dock worker who was there when they pulled this thing out. And he was a real no-nonsense guy, and he just said, we saw lots of things come out of whale stomachs, but we never saw anything like this. That's why we took the time. We were busy people, but we took the time to set this thing up. They put white sheets in behind it so you could see its color. It would stand out against the gray wood of the dock, and they took several pictures of it, and it's very clear. And, we showed this to scientists, and, most people cannot conjecture as to what this thing might be. But there's a whole history of actually what happened to the body and what the scientists at the time said and all that.
I'd like to know. First of all, I'm getting on your site. Where would I go?
Under Monster Profiles. Monster
Profile, okay.
And Cadbosaurus. And and then you just click once and leave the mouse cursor on there. It's a little awkward, but it stays up, and you should be able to see the picture of this creature. But I'll tell you in the meantime that, you know, this creature has been cited for centuries by Native Indians. It's integral. This is what makes it better to me than Loch Ness, is that you've got, you know, Native Indian people that I've talked to who've seen it to this day, but it's an integral part of their culture. I mean, it's on drums, it's on their whaling canoes, and it fits the description. Like, their image of it fits the eyewitness descriptions that happened much, much later of what people actually saw, with a horse or camel-like head, a kind of a mane, and these humps. And this animal has been described as being anywhere from 25 feet to 80, 90, 100 feet in length.
Ay. And your page is really loading very slowly. I'm coming up on it. I see a horse head sort of alternating with something else. So we'll get to it eventually. I always murder websites when I talk about stuff like this.
Okay. Well, you just go to Monster Profiles, and then you click on Chupacabra, and then you have to go to the image, and I think it's the middle button. You just click and hold on that, and this picture should come up. But in any case, what else can I tell you about?
Well, how about we play we've got eyewitness stuff here. Terry Osland?
Yeah.
And Don.
I'll tell you a lot.
Okay, all right. Well, then here's a witness to it.
The Cabrasaurus, or the serpent, was about 20 feet, probably from the beach. It was like going back thousands of years and actually seeing something prehistoric.
We proceeded to land, and we landed beside this log that moved. We then realized that it was the Cabrasaurus.
There was this huge neck and head came out of the water, and about 15 feet maybe behind that, there was the first big curve of a body with fins, and about another 15 feet behind that was the second fin.
The second thing. And then here's yet one other.
There's got to be some reason this animal comes into this part of the world. The sea serpents and these mysterious animals are sighted all over the place, all over the world in every sea. But this animal is sighted every year, and we just have to think that it's here for some purpose, whether that's reproductive reasons. And if it wasn't for the fact that you have hundreds of people seeing exactly the same thing, there probably wouldn't be a point to all this. But it's the one thing that drives us all on.
There you are. So there you are, one who saw this incredible thing. And I guess we have these things at depths in the sea, and we don't normally see them, but every now and then, there they are.
Well, there's an area near Victoria on Vancouver Island, so this is British Columbia, and it's a place called Deep Cove, and this is where the most frequent sightings happen. And this one person you heard was actually a commercial pilot, and we actually went up with him and surveyed the area, and went with one of the scientists. And there are, in fact, two scientists, former head of oceanography, University of British Columbia, Paula Blonde, and a biologist, Dr. Ed Bousfield from back east. And the two of them have been trying to get this classified as a legitimate creature for 30 years.
I know there have also been sonar, a lot of sonar reports of creatures of this sort, haven't there? Yes.
I'm not too sure about the Cadbosaurus, but I think there are other accounts like that, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm just not having any luck. Everybody's hitting the website as we're talking about it, so I'm just... we murder one website after another
Oh, well, that's okay. But this business of having an actual creature be pulled from the belly of a whale is pretty incredible.
All right, what happened to it? I mean, you said there was something about what actually happened to the creature, what the scientists did. What did they do? What?
Well, this, of course, is what makes this a great mystery monster hunt, is that Okay, what I understand is that the company, the shipping company, whaling station, basically put this thing on a bit of a road show.
Right.
And they preserved it in, I think it was acetone or some kind of alcohol, and they sent it down. I think it got as far south as Bellevue, Washington, and then the head disappeared.
What?
The head disappeared.
You mean just disappeared?
Well, I mean, someone walked off with the head. And to this day, I mean, you know, we're speculating there's a, sea serpent skull gathering dust on someone's bottom basement drawer. But the body was then taken to the Royal British Columbia Museum.
Yes.
And the curator at the time, a fellow named Francis Kermode, who was actually a taxidermist by trade and not by a trained zoologist or anything, he looked at it and declared that it was a fetal baleen whale, like a, very young juvenile type baleen whale. But it actually doesn't look anything like that, and it doesn't look like a rotting basking shark or any of these other famous explanations of, in the past people have found, lumps on the beach, or they found things that looked like sea serpents, and they proved to be like a rotting basking shark carcass. As it rots away, you end up with a spine, a little head, and these fins that jut out, so it looks like a sea serpent, but
reports of sea serpents have been around as long as men have been plying the seas.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Very, very serious stories. Seen again and again and again and again. So, and now in modern times, we're even seeing more of them, of these monster-like things in the very deep.
Well, let me just tell you another thing about this creature. There was a series of coincidental things that happened on this that were quite remarkable for me. Now, we interviewed this lady, that Terry Osland, who you heard first. Her encounter with this creature, she was walking her dog, and she came down to the beach, and this animal was on the beach, 30 to 40 feet long. The neck was up 15 feet in the air, staring at her. And, and so you kind of go, oh, yeah, well, gee, that sounds pretty fantastic. But then I'm up on a different project, actually. I'm in a native community in northern British Columbia, and I'm talking to these people, and I said to them, these are native Indian women, and I asked them about this island that's just off of their reservation there, and they said, well, that's a special place. That's where our young people went for initiation. So we've left that alone. We don't touch that at all. It's all forested, and we've left it. And they said the other thing that was special, that's the place where the serpent used to come out of the water onto the beach. And if you were a young person on a vision quest and you saw that brought you great luck in your life. But this was described as the place where the serpent came up on the beach.
Well, yeah, but these descriptions, for example, of the long neck, that sounds like Nessie.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? I mean, there have been pictures of Nessie, and we've all seen that long neck coming up out of the water. Sounds just like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the one thing that we talked to, a well-respected scientist and about this whole phenomenon, and he was actually pretty open-minded about it. He said for him the deep ocean is, uncharted territory, and he is open to the idea of there being these types of creatures there. And a friend of his, he told us kind of off the record, I guess, but he said that a friend of his who is also, whose opinion he respects as a trained scientist and so on, did see a wake moving at about 20 knots through Deep Cove one day, and it just, totally confused him. He couldn't figure out what it was. It wasn't a whale. It wasn't a seal. And it was very, very odd. So he had an open mind. So I think that
that's different.
There's something to this.
That's different for a scientist. All right, Peter, hold on.
Yep.
We're talking with a monster hunter. I guess we've agreed on that much. Peter von Puttkamer is my guest. And you've seen pictures of Nessie, I'm sure, right? Do you know that we actually know a lot less about what's at the very deepest part of our oceans than we know about near-Earth space, which we inhabit on a regular basis? We don't inhabit the depths on a regular basis. I'm Art Bell. We'll be right back. Good morning, everybody. All right, we've got it up there right now. If you go to tonight's guest on my website, artbell.com, tonight's guest, and you'll look down for Peter's name, and then down below that you'll see related image that Keith just got up. World Trade Center, Angel Bird or what? I want you to click on that and look at it a bit. It'll cause your blood to run cold. Now, we have to thank somebody out there for this. Stephen Amon, who apparently is copyrighted, has a picture and provided it for us, including a close-up. And holy moly, if this doesn't... I don't care where you think that thing is, close in or far out, it's a pterodactyl. This is some kind of monster, and was there during the World Trade Center attack. Once again, to me, this is a monster, and I don't know what else you'd call it. Something prehistoric, something paranormal, maybe. I don't know, but it's an extremely clear shot. Peter, were you able to bring that up on your computer?
I was, yes. I've had a look at it.
What do you think of that? Now,
it's pretty remarkable. It's definitely not a fuzzy image. It's very clear, even in the blow-up. It holds up very well.
The blow-up is what, and we got this very recently, and the blow-up just, excuse the expression, blew my mind. I know of no animal on Earth that has that shape of wing. Do you?
No, it's definitely odd. I mean, I'd like to see it, I'd like to see some kind of scrutiny of it a little bit. Like, I'd like to know, where it was taken and what the circumstances were and what an expert thought about it, I guess, just in terms of photographically. And
they definitely weren't after that. They were obviously after the, the pictures of the devastation going on. I mean, that's...
Yes.
Photography was all about that, but
yeah, where is that actually taken?
I don't have the whole story behind it, but I know it was one. I think it was some sort of professional photograph taken during the 9/11 disaster, and this just showed up on it. And I don't know what to make of it, but it shouldn't be there. Now, obviously, as you point out, we live in a time when people can do probably almost anything, but. People will argue, well, this thing isn't that really big. It's closer to the camera than you think. Even if that's true, with the blow-up, that's pretty historic to me. How about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a bizarre, it's something very bizarre. It's definitely not a plane, and it's not any bird that we know of. So, it's hard to say just on first.
And of course, if it's behind that building, as it actually would appear to be in the photograph, it's monstrous. Anyway, onward. We've got what you call, or what is called, Yowie.
Yes.
Yowie. What's Yowie?
Oh yeah, Yowie. Yowie's another great creature. What we tried to do in this show, when I looked at. We sort of did this definitive Bigfoot documentary, and I wanted to deal in one of these episodes with a wild man, and one that maybe isn't as well known in America, certainly quite well known in Australia. And there's a group over there, Australian Hominid Research, a fellow named Dean Harrison heads it up, and they are very, very serious monster hunters. They go out with a whole load of tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. They're not unlike the Psi Factor team. They go out and they actually do surveillance around homes. They set up tripwires, infrared, cameras hidden in logs. You can't believe the degree of, detail these guys go to try and capture this thing and on camera. Now, what we're talking about is a Bigfoot-like creature in Australia. One that's been recorded again in Aboriginal stories, but it seems to be quite a bit meaner than our one over here. And if you hear Dean does talk on the clip about its preferred killing method, it's just it's nocturnal, and all the hunts are conducted at night with minimal almost virtually no lighting, actually, at all. It was a real challenge for us to tag along on that one. They actually, monster hunters communicate through tiny sapphire lights, sort of, button-sized lights on their lapels.
Oh,
they
really?
flash at each other.
Really?
Yep.
All right, we're going to hear from Dean Harrison now, and we're going to follow that with Neil Black, a school teacher who actually saw this yowie creature. So, first, Dean Harrison. Here's Dean.
The favourite means of death of animals by the yowie, decapitation, a quick break of the neck, and bodily dismemberment. All those things don't sit very well with me.
I was told we have kangaroos, wallabies, wombats, everything, but what I heard behind that bush is something I have never heard, and nor could I describe that roar to anybody. It was so menacing, so savage, and it was directed at me. It made the hair on my neck literally stand up. I break out into goose pimples every time I think about it.
All right, now we've got a school teacher who actually saw what he's just talking about.
The yowie stood up directly in front of me. It was about 6 foot. It was standing outside. It reached across through the bush at me and roared in my face. It then took off through the bush at rather high speed, pushing everything out of its road like a mechanical backhoe, I suppose the best way to describe it. It pushed everything out of the road and roared as it went.
All right, there you have it. Peter, I too have what is said to be a legitimate recording of a Bigfoot sound. I don't know whether you've ever heard this, but take a second and listen to this. That, Peter, was recorded in this country by some researchers. Mm-hmm. Said to be a Bigfoot scream. And the way he described that, of course, we didn't hear it, but the way he described it, it sounded sort of the same.
Well, I'll tell you, having done the show on Bigfoot and then coming to this yowie phenomenon, I was impressed. The number of people that come forward on this, there was one neighborhood where apparently 60 people have seen this in one area. Mm-hmm. It's so common that they actually, they basically went on a chase with it every night. They go chase it through the bush, and they'd hear it stomping like a freight train moving in front of them. There was the school teacher, Neil, his family was like something like Harry and the Hendersons. I mean, they had this animal in their backyard swamp, and the kids knew about it, and it was, oh yeah, we're going to go down and try and, have another encounter with this thing.
Well, in this country, Peter, people paint Bigfoot as gigantic, extremely strong, but very shy, avoiding man almost every opportunity it gets, and then when it does have interaction with man, it's very friendly. It's generally very friendly, but this doesn't sound friendly at all.
No, the juvenile versions of them, that's the one Neil saw. They talking about an animal about 6 feet high, that they decided it liked to play hide and seek with them, and it would come by. They'd leave food out for it. It would take the food. I saw the areas. I mean, they're talking about, huge. Trees and bushes have been pushed out of the way. It's not something sort of a person jogging down a trail would do. So they're talking about something that leaves a big footprint on the land, so to speak. When it moves, it just crashes and moves everything out of the way. And our yowie hunters have had incidents where they've had rocks thrown at them.
That's typical of Bigfoot as well.
Yes.
So it may well be the same creature, but with a distinctly different temperament. Bigfoot is, I've always thought, a eater of vegetation, that sort of thing. What you're describing sounds like a killer.
Yeah, there's some pretty nasty stories about, finding sort of large animals partly up trees that have been, ripped apart by one of these things. And there's actually, if you wanted to know more about it, they have a really good site, YowieHunters.com, AHR. They have like reports all the time about these things, and they go out and really investigate them. They're very, very serious about their investigations and what they're trying to do. And another thing that's very unusual, and I guess a bit comical to some people, is that these yowies leave these bite marks in trees, and it's because in Australia they have these beetle grubs. And there's a big debate on this, and we talked to scientists about it, and they said it's black cockatoos that do this, and they rip the trees apart because they look like even canine marks on the trees. And as Dean said, this cockatoo, if it's a cockatoo, it better have a tape measure going along at 6-foot intervals. So it's very unusual, and I've seen examples of these bite marks that they leave behind.
I'm curious, if you were to get lucky enough to go out with a group, and there you are with your camera, and you actually get into the presence of one of these things, professional as you are, do you really think you could keep the camera pointed and really stay on the job, or would you beat feet?
Well,
you ever wonder about that? I mean, after all, you do go out, so you may eventually encounter.
I mean, I've shot wildlife, and I've shot some dangerous animals, and I was just down in Mexican caves looking for blind cave tarantulas, so I've been in some fairly dangerous and tricky situations.
Let's roll over that again. You were just in Mexico in caves looking for what?
It's for an animal plant show I'm directing called Spider Mania.
Yes.
And it's coming up on the 30th. And basically we went into these caves to film a never-before-seen blind cave tarantula. And
my God.
We had to go a mile underground.
Oh, my God.
To find this, and it was a actual chasm that had been carved out during the flash floods. And the walls were kind of damp, and we were kind of hoping that it wasn't going to rain while we were down there.
You must have lost your mind. Tell me, I've heard a lot of stories about, and I wonder if you have too, about things that live beneath the earth. I'm sure spiders are down there. And by the way, did you find them?
We did, and then we found some even bigger ones in Venezuela that are the size of dinner plates. And then we cooked them up with the natives down there and ate them.
What? Did you really? You say spiders the size of dinner plates?
Yeah, 12 inches across. And these guys revere them as messengers of the dead. They speak to in the hallucinogenic drug ritual, they speak to these spiders. And through the spider, it's like a conduit to the underworld, and they speak to their ancestors. And when things get tight with the blowgun huntings, they pull the spiders out of their dens and they cook them up in a big barbecue. And we were at one of those, and I got to taste the leg, and it was pretty interesting.
It tastes like chicken?
Actually, it tasted like prawn. That's the interesting part. They're big crabs, basically.
How do you talk yourself into going, into a mile deep into a cave? How do you do that?
I had a true fear factor moment there, actually, as I was descending down, especially because they told us it was going to be a walk in the park. And, it says, oh, yeah, you just walk straight in. It's, easy, and you go in, and I'm looking at a chasm in the ground that is as wide as my shoulders, and we're basically going down this corkscrew tunnel, where you're basically stooped over and your head is grazing the ceiling.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff really scares me.
And as you go deeper and you go, gee, I hope this doesn't go on for a mile like this,
Which it did, I guess.
Well, it actually, after a couple of 100 yards, it actually cleared up into a bigger chamber, but then to get to the next chamber, we had to crawl on our hands, well, actually on our stomachs. We had to crawl underneath this huge slab for about another, I don't know, maybe 150 yards to get into the bigger chamber. And there was water down there. There were scorpions in there. There were vampire bats.
Vampire bats. What sort of legends have you heard? And believe me, I've heard a lot from Native Americans I've had on the air here about a whole underworld that we don't even know about. We know so little about the ground beneath us, the water beneath our seas. We know more about near space than we do about these things.
That's true, actually. I think that's the great, other than the deep oceans, that what's inside the earth is...
you bet.
Another great unknown, and I don't know. It's hard to say. I guess, ever since Journey to the Center of the Earth, there have been stories of alternate worlds down there, and indeed, whole new forms of life. I did hear, I was investigating a story about caves in Romania where they virtually discovered a lost world of primarily, smaller, reptiles and bats and what have you. But it was literally, this was about 1995, 96, and they discovered all these new species. They just cracked open this cave, and inside were all of these unknown species that had never been discovered before.
And if you could get down far enough, you have to wonder what indeed might be down there. I've had a lot of stories, legit stories of extremely deep holes. Have you you heard any rumors about that sort of thing? I mean, in a sense, you've already heard them, but I mean, really apparent endless holes.
Well, I actually seem to remember hearing quite an interesting one on your show one night, which was some kind of a hole where someone had been, putting miles of fish line down into it.
That would be Mel Waters, yeah.
Yeah.
And he has now found a second hole that you might be interested in, located here in the state of Nevada. And the people doing follow-up investigation on this hole, are finding people in the area of the original Mel's hole up in Washington State that are backing his story about this hole. While nobody's actually, an organized party has found it yet, they are looking, and they think they're closing in on it, and they think they know roughly where it is. So there may be some portholes to some other place below us in the earth.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. In my film Sasquatch Odyssey, The Hunt for Bigfoot, we actually went in some caves around Mount St. Helens. And I think you've had Ray Crow on your show before.
Oh, yes.
And we were with his group. But I know that there are people that believe that Bigfoot actually gets around in a network of tunnels. And there is a theory about that.
That would account for a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Regarding the sightings of Bigfoot, that really would account for a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why I like monsters, but I do. Sitting here doing the show, talking to you, I like monsters. But is seeing one? No, thank you. Listen, we'll hold you around.
Not believe or disbelieve on the Chupacabra.
We'll be back here in a moment. What we're going to do is that was actually more on the Chupacabra. What we're going to do here is to take a break, and when we do get back, what I want to do is have you answer some phone calls. I mean, a lot of people are kind of into monsters, so if you wouldn't mind answering some questions about monsters.
Sure.
Okay, then we'll consider that a done deal. Stay right where you are. When we get back, we will open the lines and let you ask, or who knows, maybe some of you have sightings of some of these things. They are, obviously, they're out there. But what are they to us? And have they always been there, or do they sort of come and go? From the high desert, I'm going to go now, and then we'll come back. I'm Art Bell. All right, back now to my guest, Peter. You're back on the air again, and I guess we're going to talk a little bit about the Tasmanian Tiger before we take any calls here. It's the last item that I've got on the list here. What is the Tasmanian tiger?
Story, and it's unfolding as we speak. Tasmanian tiger was a creature, a real animal. It looks like a cross between a kangaroo and a wolf, and it has tiger stripes, and it would hop initially like a kangaroo and then run more like a wolf-like gait.
Oh.
It had a huge jaw, 120-degree gait, more like a reptile than a mammal.
Oh, my God.
And it was perceived as a monster by the settlers. They thought it was killing their sheep. They actually found it was labeled a vampire. They found that it was drinking blood and internal organs and leaving the rest of the animal. And so there was a government bounty put on its head, and supposedly it was wiped out. Last one died in a zoo in 1936.
Mm-hmm.
Our monster hunter, Cole Bailey, has seen it. He saw the creature about 25 years ago, and he's been looking for it ever since. He's since heard it. He's had an encounter, both, like he's just missed it, where his father was a trapper. He knows about hunting these things, and he smelt it. He knew it was there, and he's also heard the distinctive yip. In the meantime, the Australian Museum has a 150-year-old fetus of one of these animals preserved in alcohol.
Really?
They have now extracted enough DNA from it to clone one. It would be the first time in human history that an extinct species would be brought back to life.
Is that a good idea?
Well, that's what we address in the show, because we're saying, okay, so the settlers thought the old one was a monster. Wait till they start cooking around with this one. You're going to really create a monster.
Let's give them a little taste of what we've got here. We've got a Colonel Bailey, who's a monster hunter, on a camping experience, and then this Dr. Michael Archer from the Australian Museum discusses a cloning experiment which is about to apparently bring back the Tasmanian tiger from extinction. So those two cuts coming up right now. First, Colonel Bailey.
It was early one morning. Out of nowhere came this mysterious yip-yip, like a fox terrier dog, a high-pitched yip-yip, and almost immediately an echo, like that. I was fascinated. Now, this is exactly as old Bushman had told me the tiger sounds like. I knew then, in my own mind, that the tiger was there. It gave me great satisfaction to hear that.
All right, and now Dr. Michael Archer, who apparently is prepared, has enough DNA to bring this thing back. Listen to this.
We've discovered that a pickled pup of a thylacine, an animal we all thought and accept broadly as extinct, has been extinct since 1936, was actually preserved by a collector in Tasmania in 1866. And in pickling this pup, he passed into the future the possibility that its DNA could be preserved. So we dipped into this pickled pup just on the off chance, and against a storm of people who said it's impossible, you'll never find it. And when we came up, there was this wonderful high-quality DNA in vast quantities. We have the thylacines' complete DNA.
Great. So this sounds like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
That's what they did in Jurassic Park, right?
That's correct. And the Australian Museum they seem to be in a bit of a race with the Mammoth people, because there's a group trying to clone a mammoth, and the Mammoth people aren't having much luck.
Well, woolly mammoth?
Yeah, the woolly mammoth, based on the frozen, carcass that they found in ice in Siberia. And so this is much further along. And they estimate it could cost as much as $30 million to do this. And to actually clone this animal, they have to use some of the DNA from an existing species that's related to it. And in that case, it's a Tasmanian devil. And
how good of an idea do you think this is? Well, I'm serious. How good an idea do you personally believe this is?
Well, personally, I don't think it's a good idea to be tinkering around with something in nature like this. I mean, we have no idea okay, so maybe the first one will be okay, but, you know, what is going to be the impact down the road, and what, you know, when you bring something like this into the world?
Well, could it not be true that it could be my thinking, the natural course of events as evolution plods on and time plods on is that some animals become extinct for some specific reason. Either what they eat is gone, or, you know, climate change or something or another has changed so that they're extinct, whatever it is that causes an animal to go extinct. But if you bring them back into the modern world that's not ready for them, inevitably, as they said in Jurassic Park, there's some mathematical formula that covers this, but it's going to go all wrong.
Yeah, that's quite possible. I mean, and that's what's so great about this. I mean, what's great about this story is you have sort of one man against the world. I mean, there are other thylacine. It's called the thylacine, another name for the Tasmanian tiger. There's more than one thylacine hunter, but really Cole Bailey has been leading the charge here, and he, you know, he's in a race against time now to prove that this animal exists before science goes ahead and tries to clone this thing and maybe creates another monster.
Do you have any idea what their timetable is?
Oh, there's a documentary being made as we speak about this cloning, and it's an ongoing documentary. They're talking about, you know, just a few years kind of thing.
All right. Look, we're going to go and take some phone calls now, and let's see what's out there. But that one I'm not so sure of at all. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Peter. Hello.
Hello?
Hi.
Art. Hello, Art. Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
I've been listening to Art Show for a long time, and that gives me the opportunity to hear different sounds that are emitted by different creatures.
Yes.
And connecting the dots, it seems to me, and I have that question, what do you think about it, is that to me some of these creatures are definitely genetically engineered by aliens. And I say this because of the metallic and machine quality like of the scream or the sounds they make, and also the energy they have. And, you know, in opposition with real earth monsters that I know exist too, who you can feel have a natural quality to them of the earth. I don't know how to explain this very well, but
I think you're doing very well. In other words, you're saying that the sound that some of these monsters make is not one of native Earth.
No.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. And then in other cases, it is easily quantifiable as being from our native Earth. You agree with that, Peter?
Well, I think I hadn't actually heard that before. I think that's
in other words,
pretty fantastic thought. I hadn't really thought of it that way.
Substitute, I mean, we did talk about the paranormal, right?
Yep.
So you could substitute alien for paranormal. In other words, one way or the other, not of this natural Earth. And some of the sounds are sort of alien in that sense to us, almost mechanical sounding, as she said, while others you could imagine would be of this natural Earth, even if rare.
You'd kind of have to go through these creatures and pick out the biologically based ones and the ones that were more in the realm of, the paranormal or demonic or what have you, or even in the case of the Chupacabra, I mean, that could well be something, an alien
pet
creature of some kind.
I think you said alien pet that got loose.
Yeah, well, that was certainly one of the theories.
Yeah. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Peter. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hi.
This is Cat from near San Francisco.
Yes, sir.
Back in the 50s when I was in college, at several of the bull sessions that we were involved in, we had this Texan there. And he was telling us all these fantastic stories, including some about pterodactyls down the Big Bend area. And I kind of passed them off and filed them for future reference, laughingly, until a couple of the people who were related to exozoology on your show happened to mention Texas sightings of pterodactyls.
Yes.
I'll grant you there's an awful lot about places we don't know, and even here in the San Francisco Bay Area, I know for doggone sure there are places in Santa Cruz Mountains where a man has never put his foot.
That's truth. That's truth. I've been up in those mountains. He's absolutely right. So even in the places that we consider the most urban of all, nearby there are areas, as he points out, Santa Cruz Mountains are a really good example, that are just absolute, total, for the most part, untouched wilderness, places where man has never put his foot. Peter?
The pterodactyl thing is fascinating to me, especially because tonight someone actually emailed me an image, and I'm sure, Art, you've probably seen this one. I had only ever seen sketches of this. It appears to be some Civil War soldiers with what look like a downed pterodactyl lying on the ground in front of them.
You know, I don't think I have seen that. I know your wife is with you during the show tonight, isn't she?
My wife?
Or assistant or some female.
Well, she could get on the line if you like.
No. What I was asking is, perhaps you could email me that photograph.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Can you send that over to me?
Yes, we could do that.
All right. Let me clear my email box right now. It's artbell@mindspring.com.
Okay.
Because I don't think that I've seen what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, we'll work on that.
All right. Let's work on that, and maybe through the bottom of the hour I can get that to my webmaster very quickly. It's artbell@mindspring.com.
Yeah, it's a fascinating picture. It'd be worth knowing, like, where exactly it came from and how authentic it is.
All right, please fire it to me, and we'll get it up on the web right away.
Okay.
All right, east of the Rockies, you're on the air with Peter von Puttkamer. Hi.
Good morning, Art.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Peter.
Where are you?
I'm in Denver.
Denver, okay.
My question for Peter is this. Have you ever run across a claim of someone who has had an encounter with Bigfoot, of hearing it speak or speaking to it or having any type of conversation? Or was it just sightings?
No, I've had, well, of course, you've probably had fellow Jack Lapseritis on your show. Have you ever had him on your show?
I don't.
Written a book called The Psychic Sasquatch, but he claims to have had several encounters with Sasquatches that did actually speak to him. Some of the more hard-nosed people like Renee DeHenden or Dr. Grover Krantz, they probably wouldn't go along with that. But
I've had recordings on the air.
Yes.
Of Bigfoot, and they some of it's pretty scary stuff. It's very guttural, and hard to hear, but sometimes unmistakable. Now, who can ever know if these are genuine recordings? But they're pretty hair-raising.
Well, I'm talking about coming up and speaking in English.
Yeah, so am I.
And addressing. Yeah, is that okay? Yeah.
I've actually had these recordings on the air, Peter.
Okay.
They're astounding. So, west of the Rockies, you're on the air with Peter. Good morning.
Hello, Art.
Hello. Peter. Where are you, sir?
I'm in Tucson.
Okay.
Yeah, reference Sasquatch and Chupacabra.
Chupacabra, yes.
Chupacabra. I have a comment, maybe a question. Whereas a Sasquatch, I believe, is a primate who has learned to use the underground for his survival. And Chupacabra, I believe, is an animal from the underground worlds who has learned to use the surface for maybe some of his survival, reference food.
Yeah.
That's a comment. And the question is, has Chupacabra been described as reptilian at all? I'm thinking of the draconian races.
Well, that's a good question. Now, in what class, Peter, would Chupacabra?
I've heard various ideas about that. We, in our show, decided to go with the reptilian. It made the most sense to have the reptilian. I have heard of hair-covered and so on, but everything else about the creature is very reptilian. The claws, the sort of slithering appendage that comes out of its mouth, even descriptions of the skin, and of course the spikes that come off the head and down the back.
Spikes and scales, right?
And scales,
that sounds very reptilian.
But there is a sort of school of thought about this that talks about fur, and it seemed didn't seem to quite fit to me, but I could be wrong.
Your show, the one that you put together, how can it be seen? Where can it be seen?
Our program called Monster Hunters?
Yes,
Yes, it's on TLC. There's actually 2 episodes that we've done right now, and this is our pilot. We've done 6 segments. There's 3 in each segment, in each episode.
When would be the next opportunity?
Okay, so the date is May 7th.
May 7th.
At 9 o'clock on TLC, the Learning Channel.
Learning Channel, yes.
Yes, and check your local listings. And June 25th at 10 o'clock.
All right, see if you can email that to me, and we'll get those times on again for the show, and we'll be right back with Peter. All right, we're going to... I'm going to send this again, just to make sure. I want to get it up on the website right away for all of you. This is an amazing, amazing picture, so let's see. Let me send it to a different address. Okay. Got to do this sometimes on the fly. So there it goes to yet another address. All right. This amazing photograph, which I have just sent off to Keith, to get up on the web. And this is, oh my God, what...
pretty wild.
Pretty wild is right, Peter. This would appear to be from the Civil War era, huh?
Mm-hmm.
These are obviously Civil War soldiers standing, one guy with his foot on this. What in the hell is that? What is that?
Well, it looks like a perfect depiction. I mean, it looks like a pterodactyl to me.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
A gigantic one. I mean, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Civil War soldiers spaced out and still not covering how long this thing is, eh?
Right.
Holy mackerel.
So someone emailed that to me tonight, and asked me if I knew anything about it. And now I have talked to one person up here who's a bit of a crypto specialist, and he felt that this was actually a hoax. But I haven't... Actually, I don't know how it was hoaxed, or if those are guys in costume.
I agree with you. If that's a hoax, that's something.
Yeah.
We'll have it up, folks. I'm not sure where. In just a moment, I'll let you know as soon as Keith gets it up, which would be a matter of a couple of minutes, I would guess. In the meantime, we've got somebody we want to bring on. With Peter, and we should probably have done it a little earlier. I'm terribly sorry about that. Jason Walton, welcome to the program.
Hello, how you doing?
Pretty good. You've been listening along?
Sure.
Okay, what do you think about all this, and where do you fit in?
Oh, well, I'm strictly just involved with the Cabrasaurus off Victoria, Vancouver Island, BC.
Okay, well, can you tell us about it?
Well, what we have is about 300 years starting back with native folklore and myth of a large serpentine animal anywhere from 30 to 60 feet long that people have been seeing and right up to this very day and reporting off the waters here on the island. And we started a group called Caddy Scan in 1999 with Ed Bousfield and Paul LeBlanc, a couple of marine biologists who had previously written a book, and now we're trying to find some sort of definitive footage or physical evidence for this unknown animal.
And how did the two of you come together?
I actually phoned up, and this is me and Peter, sorry?
Yes.
Oh, well, Peter gave me a call, and he was doing a documentary, and he said he would love to do something on the Cabrasaurus, mainly because I think no one's ever really heard about it, and they were trying to cover animals that
not a lot of people might have heard. And as far as Loch Ness and these other lake monsters, there's a lot of the Ogopogo, there's a lot of stuff on this, but Cadborosaurus has kind of remained one of Victoria's best-kept secrets.
Are there any photographs in existence or just sightings?
The two best photographs we have are from a book called Whalers No More from Captain Hagelin. And there were two very clear photographs in 1937 off the Queen Charlotte Islands of a specimen, a dead specimen, that was pulled out of a stomach of a sperm whale. And these guys got really excited about it. And unfortunately, it was one of these things that was sent to someone who was unqualified, dismissed it as something else.
Yes, I think we heard about that earlier. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And they basically, being during times of war, they chucked it away. So that was lost to us.
They chucked it away. Well, listen, this photograph that I was talking about for my audience, we've done it again, folks. He got it here, and I got it to my webmaster, and my webmaster, Keith, got it up again right under Peter's name. You'll now see a third image, pterodactyl with soldiers, it says, and you might want to take a look at this. Have both of you seen this? I'd expect not, huh?
Photograph of the pterodactyl.
Yeah.
Oh, Peter emailed that to me. Peter, what was the date on that?
You mean the actual image of when it was taken?
Something that was kind of unearthed in the last few weeks?
Well, no. Apparently, it's been around a long time, and the image that I've always seen was a sketch based on that photograph.
No kidding. So now for the first time we've got an actual, and it does certainly, it obviously is a photograph, my God. And it's very, very old. Or if somebody went to the trouble to fake all this, I just don't know how they would have done it.
Photoshop 4 is quite good. I think a lot of these guys, there's actually another photograph of a pterodactyl I looked at. It turned out that someone had unearthed right after that a picture of some, it was back in the 1800s. I think they had shot some criminals, and they were displaying them and all standing around. And what the people had done is they had taken out the criminals and superimposed this giant pterodactyl-like carcass. And it was a different photograph, but very similar.
It really is a terrible problem we have in modern days. The only thing that you can say is before we got, Photoshop 4 and 5 and whatever, before all of this stuff was available, before computers, we had Polaroids. And a lot of people got shots of these same creatures with Polaroids, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what's great about this Cadborosaurus picture. Hey, 1937, no Photoshop, and this thing's just lying there, and it's pretty wild. It's really hard. There would have been no way to fake it, and as the old timer told us, they didn't have time for no hoaxes. They were busy working every day.
You can also request the original pictures if you like in the BC archives, and that is free. And they have the original snapshots down there with the date.
Well,
that was donated by the fellow who took the pictures.
So are you going to stay on the hunt?
Most definitely. If people continue to call us and report these things, which happens every year, probably about 5 times, we don't get that many. We do have 24-hour cameras up now that can be accessed through the internet by ourselves. And with any luck, we're hoping to get something. Also working with the local fishing community in hopes of what happens when they bring up their nets and what's called podcatch.
Tell them about that commercial fisherman, Jason, that you've been working with.
And which one was that?
The fellow where you've set up the camera and he saw the humps, the tire-like humps.
This is Bob. Oh, geez, what's his last name now? And we set it up in his backyard. And on I think it was 1998, I'm terrible with dates, he was outside and he saw something that he had never seen before, tire-like humps suddenly appearing, moving in a straight line, moving so quickly. He couldn't believe the speed. A lot of the people that see these things can't believe the speed that they move at. Anyway, a number of years later, he found my name and was very happy to hear that he agreed to a permanent camera installation at his place. So we have this running on motion sensor 24 hours a day.
This is a guy who's seen big sea lions. He's seen killer whales. He knows marine life. He spent his life on the water, and he saw this thing and said, "This is something different."
Which most of these guys do. There's a lot of guys that run tours and things like that. And one fellow that was off in a local marina with a tour group. And the thing with the Cadbrosaurus is that we do not really take seriously sightings with bumps unless it is someone quite knowledgeable like a commercial fisherman. But some people report animals with 12-foot necks, horse-like head, and several loops behind.
Okay, well, again, I've got to ask this question of you, Jason. We covered it earlier, but I mean, even if we actually get a live specimen of one of these things, we live in such a cynical Photoshop world.
Yes.
That I don't care how live it is. It's liable to go on tour, and everybody will view it as some sort of weird oddity or malformation of something, or, they'll call it a million things, but will they really scientifically admit, here's what we've got? I don't know. I don't think that's too likely. How about you?
Well, I think Ed or Paul, being the scientists, they could better answer this question. A number of things could happen. I actually hope that if it happens, it is a dead specimen so that we don't have to go through, all the moral decisions of what's going to happen next. There's every possibility we might get a live one. We do have considerations for live marinas here on the island that are friends of theirs that will deal with this if this happens, because we have had a lot of reports of people walking down the beach and seeing what they describe as baby dragons.
So then there's actually a plan in place should this occur?
Yeah, we have sort of there's a plan for, say, a dead carcass or a live one, but you do have to make these just in case. 1 in a million chance.
There was a lady who reported finding a juvenile one on the beach and then dragging it back into the water, right?
What?
And that was right before. That was actually on John's Island. And about a year before, there was actually a period of 2 years. There was a couple of ladies, different parts of one was in B.C. and one was on John's Island in Washington. And they had both seen large, what you would call a very large animal on the beach. And in John's Island, she saw this animal. And in the morning time on a walk, she saw something she'd never seen scuttling around in the sand. And she picked it up with a stick and put it back into the water.
Put it back in the water. That just must kill you.
See what I said about the Native Indian stuff earlier. They know that these things come up on the beach. It's part of their education for their young people. They tell them, go to that island because that's where the serpents come up out of the water. And they come on the beach, and there's different theories about them maybe birthing up there or going for, fresh water or God knows what. But there's, they might be like turtles, that have to come ashore for these sorts of things.
It's really hard to say. As Ed sometimes has theorized that these might be animals that give birth to live young and may come into warm channels or be it right onto land to give birth. And it's sort of, the whole thing is kind of ending up more like a detective story than a mystery, really, of tying all this stuff together and whether this is the same species or not. Have been seen at the same location, as well as, somebody might report something that looks a little different, maybe male-female sexual dimorphism, larger heads, perhaps a mane. It's fascinating what we hear, and what the information that comes from are from blue-collar Canadians and people in careers. They have absolutely nothing to gain by phoning us up.
Sure.
They have everything to lose, so it keeps me speechless constantly.
Jason, I'm sure you heard Peter earlier talking about what they're going to do with this Tasmanian tiger. They've got this DNA, and they're going to try and bring back this extinct animal. I suppose there are other monsters, like the one that you're hunting, that you might get a piece of or get some DNA of or something like that. One might imagine you'd get a piece of one, and then you get the DNA, so you could create these things. And apparently they're ready to create something that doesn't really belong on Earth right now. How would you feel about that process?
Oh, well, I don't know. That's the big moral issue, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yes.
It's like people introducing species to get rid of another species, and then surprisingly they go, geez, something really bad's happening. Maybe stop and learn. I don't know.
Yeah, the big oops.
Yes. And then another oops a few years later. So, I don't know. With the DNA, it's one of those things that people should say, well, it's all right. Let's put that law into fact, and as long as nobody goes over that. But, of course, someone's always going to want to go further and further, so no answer.
I want to get this on again for sure because a lot of people are going to ask. The show is coming up May 5th, you said.
No, May 7th.
May 7th?
May 7th.
Ooh, important distinction. May 7th on
May 7th at 9 o'clock on the Learning Channel on TLC.
Okay.
And also on June 25th, that's actually episode 2, June 25th at 10 o'clock. Check your local listings. The first episode covers Jersey Devil, UK Phantom, Big Cats, and Chupacabra. And then episode 2 is Cadbosaurus, Yowie, and this Tasmanian Tiger.
In other words, we've kind of gone through both episodes tonight, but if you want to see the visuals and the interviews, it's all going to be on the Learning Channel. How did you hook up, I'm curious, with the Learning Channel versus, I don't know, a million other shows?
Well, mostly because we produced our show, Sasquatch Odyssey, The Hunt for Bigfoot, which we are actually selling, and you can, people can pick up from us on our Monster Hunters site or SasquatchOdyssey.com. That one we produced in '99, won a lot of awards for it, and we actually sold it to TLC. And on the strength of that, we talked to them about, more monsters and more people that are looking for them. And they were intrigued and backed us on this series.
What about you, Jason? Do you have a view on why people like monsters so much?
Oh, well, it's fun. I mean, I watch a lot of movies myself.
Me too.
It's something that I've always been interested in, the mysterious aspect of it all. With animals and the unknown earth and all that. It's great stuff. It's great stuff. And, of course, legends and sea serpents and all that. The etchings and all this, and then to actually be talking to someone who's describing that, it's the most fascinating thing I've ever been a part of.
Gentlemen, is there any place on Earth that doesn't have monsters? I mean, we have plenty of them in this country, but, I mean, do either one of you know of any place on Earth that doesn't have legends and reports of monsters?
That'd be a difficult one to answer.
The only place I could think of would be like the Antarctic, because I'm sure there are tales in the Arctic about monsters.
Woolly mammoths or something,
yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's where James Arness was.
Well, there's all kinds of fantastic stories. I mean, extinct species, so-called extinct species or primeval species that may still be around is another whole branch of cryptozoology. For example, the search for the giant sloth in Chile. And,
I'm sorry, the giant what?
The giant sloth.
Sloth, oh, okay.
Like the ground sloth?
Right.
Those things are huge. They're like 10 feet high. They have fangs about 5 inches long, and they weigh about 2,000 pounds. And they have actually found evidence that basically early Native Americans were corralling these and penning them like cattle in caves. And like domesticating them. They were around at the same time 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. These things still walked around the New World. And there are suggestions that these animals may still be there. So we're looking at a whole, doing more of these programs. We're hoping there's a public interest in this, and we want to do...
there's a gigantic interest in this.
Yeah. And, we all kind of grew up watching, the In Search of shows and the Arthur C. Clarke shows, and there really hasn't been a lot, in my mind, that's been provocative and interesting, and I wanted to do something different that looked at the monster hunters and used the latest technology and night vision and all the hardware we've got now to make a really fascinating and entertaining show, and that's what we set out to do.
Well, you certainly set out to do it tonight and achieved it, Jason. I want to thank Jason, and I want to thank you, certainly, Peter, for everything tonight and providing all those cuts and kind of as a teaser for the show coming up on TLC. I'll be there on May 7th on TLC, as I hope my audience will. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Appreciate it.
Good night to both of you. There you have it, folks. Monsters. You're going to want to check out this picture we just got up there minutes ago. It came from Peter. It's called Pterodactyl with Soldiers. Absolutely wild stuff. From the high desert, good night.
When you hear the music.